Often in your game mechanics, you're going to need to check the distance between two vector points in 3D space. By drawing an invisible line between those points in the 3D space, we can check this distance, and you can do that by writing a script fairly simply. In this example, we have a cube which is falling using a rigid body. In the middle, there's a light, and what we're going to do is get it to switch on that light when it's a certain distance from it. So if we create a new JavaScript, I'm going to call this light switch, and double click it to launch it in your script editor. So to begin with, we need to establish a variable to represent the position of the box. So I'm going to say var box, and I'm going to data type it to transform. So again, because it's outside a function, it's a member variable that we can assign to using the inspector in Unity. Then inside the update function, I'm going to write yet another variable called dist of type float. So float is just floating point, which means a number with a decimal place. And we're going to say is equal to vector3 class dot distance function, and we need to feed that two vector 3s. So a vector 3 is a point in the world which has an x, y, and z. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is feed in the box variable we established at the top, dot position. So because it's a transform, position is a member of that, so we say box dot position. And then the other is going to be transform dot position. So simply inheriting it from the position of the object we attach this to. And we're going to attach this script to the light. So it says transform dot position to take the position of the light itself. So dist represents the distance between those 2 points in the 3D space. Then what we're going to do is check with an if statement whether dist is less than or equal to 10. And if it is, we'll say light.enabled equals true. So there we're simply switching on and off that light component. And then we'll say else to say otherwise, light.enabled is equal to false. So because that box is falling, eventually its distance is going to be less than it is at the moment. Currently, if we just briefly switch back to Unity, the box is at 60, the light is at a height of 30, and the ground is at 0. So it's currently more than 10, and the point light as a component is switched off. So our script is going to switch it on when the distance between those 2 points is less than 10. So if you make sure that script is saved, switch back to Unity, and then drag the distance check onto the point light. So in the point light, you can see now that that script has become a component, but what it needs is the information on what box represents. So we know it's a transform, but it doesn't know inherently which object. So I'm going to grab full box and drop it onto that. So now when I press play, the box falls down, and when it's less than 10, the light's switched on, and when it gets further away, it gets switched off again. We can check this distance and print it by simply putting in a debug.log command. So debug will just print out to the console where you see scripting errors and tell you the information that you feed into it. So if we feed in that dist variable and save and play again, now when I press play, you can see that debug.log is showing in there, and if I double click, I can bring up the console. Let's place it there briefly, and you can see every frame it's checking. So it's still checking now because I'm still got play on. So if I switch that off, you can see if I backtrack, when the game starts, it's roughly 30 away, which it was. It falls down to a distance where it's close and then builds back up again as it gets further away. So that's a basic checking of distance between two vector points in Unity.